Our home was once full of light. It was a place where laughter bounced off the walls and settled in the corners like dust motes in a sunbeam. My father, Adekunle, would lift me high into the air, and my small hands would touch the ceiling. He called me his little star, his. My mother, Funky, would watch us from the kitchen doorway, her smile the brightest thing in the room. She would hum old Yoruba folk songs while she pounded yam, the rhythmic thud a heartbeat for our family. Those days felt like they would last forever. They were simple. They were everything. The change did not happen overnight. It was slow, like the turning of the seasons, but without the promise of spring. The laughter faded first. It was replaced by hushed arguments that drifted from my parents' room after I was meant to be asleep. Adekunle's booming voice, once a source of joy, became a low rumble of thunder that never broke into rain. Funky's humming stopped. The silence she left in its place was heavy, a thick blanket that smothered the air in our small house. I did not understand the words they exchanged, but I understood the tension. It was a language of its own. The arguments grew louder. Words became weapons. Words like debt and shame and disappointment flew between them. My father started coming home late. The smell of stale palm wine clung to his clothes. My mother's eyes were often red and swollen, as if she had been crying for hours. She would hold me tight, her grip almost painful, but she never explained why the light was leaving our home. She built a wall of silence around her pain, and by extension, around me. I learned not to ask questions. I learned that some doors are better left closed. Then came the day he left. There was no grand fight, there was no final shouted goodbye. There was only an empty space where his clothes used to be. My mother found a note on the kitchen table. It was short, the words were few. She read it once, then twice before her hands began to shake. She crumpled it into a tight ball and threw it away. She did not cry in front of me. She simply went into her room and closed the door. The silence that followed his departure was different. It was not just an absence of sound. It was a presence. It was the sound of a family breaking apart. My mother, Funky, became two people after my father left. There was the Funky who faced the world. She held her head high as she walked to the market. She haggled for prices with a firm voice. She sold her beautiful Edir fabrics with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. To the community, she was a strong woman. She was a survivor, a mother doing what was necessary for her child. She endured the pitying glances and the hushed whispers of the other market women. She never let them see her crack. She was a fortress. She was made of stone. But there was another Funky. This was the one I saw when the sun went down and the world outside grew quiet. This Funky was made of glass. The weight of her solitude pressed down on her shoulders, making her stoop. I would sometimes wake in the night to the sound of her quiet weeping. It was a soft, broken sound, like a bird with a wounded wing. She would sit alone in the darkness of our living room, staring at nothing. The bills piled up. The landlord knocked on our door with an impatient fist. Her strength was a performance, and I was her only audience for the exhaustion that followed. As I grew, I became her shadow and her support. I learned to read the lines of worry on her forehead. I learned to cook the stew just the way she liked it when she was too tired to stand. I grew from a girl into a young woman in a house filled with the ghost of a man we never spoke of. My own questions about him were buried deep inside me. I saw how the mention of his name, even by a well-meaning neighbor, could cast a shadow over my mother's face for days. So I learned to forget him, or at least I pretended to. My journey to womanhood was quiet. It was marked not by celebrations, but by the steady rhythm of our struggle. I finished my schooling, my grades a source of silent pride for my mother. I started helping her at the market stall, my hands learning the feel of the fabrics, my voice learning to call out to customers. I watched my friends talk about their fathers, about the families that were whole. A part of me always felt a sting of emptiness. There was a hole in my story, a chapter that had been torn out. My mother gave me everything she had, but she could not give me that. He appeared one market day when the sun was high and hot. He was a new face in our bustling community of Ilesa. He called himself Mr. Tay. He was a quiet man, older, with lines of hardship etched around his mouth and eyes. He set up a small stall across from ours, selling carved wooden figures and small trinkets. He did not say much, but he watched everything. His gaze was gentle, but intense. Sometimes I would look up from my work and find him looking at me. He would quickly look away, as if caught doing something he should not. He began to visit our stall. At first, he would just buy a small piece of cloth. He would praise its quality in a low, gravelly voice, a voice that felt strangely familiar, like a half-remembered song from a long time ago. He would ask about my day. He would ask about my studies. He never asked about my mother, who always seemed to be busy with another customer whenever he approached. He seemed to understand the invisible boundary she had drawn around herself. He respected it. He spoke only to me. A strange bond began to form between us. He told me stories of faraway cities, of working on large ships that sailed across endless oceans. He spoke of loneliness and regret, his words painting pictures of a life lived in the shadows. He listened to my dreams. I told him I wanted to be a teacher, to fill young minds with knowledge and stories. He would nod slowly, a sad smile playing on his lips. He said it was a noble dream. He said I had a kind heart. He made me feel seen in a way I had not felt before. He never once mentioned his own family. He was a man without a past, or so it seemed. But there were moments, fleeting and strange, that made me wonder. The way his eyes would crinkle at the corners when I laughed. It was the same way my mother's did. The way he would absent-mindedly tap his fingers on the table. A rhythm I felt I knew deep in my bones. I dismissed these feelings as foolish. He was just a kind old man, a friend. But deep down, a seed of recognition had been planted, waiting for the rain of truth to make it grow. The market is a place of commerce, but it is also a place of information. News travels faster than a Harmattan wind among the stalls of pepper and palm oil. The friendship between me, Aduni, and the new carver, Mr. Tay, did not go unnoticed. The other women watched us. They saw the way he saved the sweetest mango for me. They saw the long conversations we had while my mother pretended not to listen. Their whispers started as a low hum, a curiosity about the lonely girl and the mysterious stranger. They were just whispers, at first. The warnings came from Iwaye Sakira, a woman whose stall was next to ours. She had known my mother for years. She had seen our family break. One afternoon, she pulled me aside. Her face was serious. "Aduni, be careful," she said, her voice low. "A man does not show such kindness for nothing. We do not know this man. We do not know where he comes from." Her words were meant to protect me, but they felt like an accusation. They planted a seed of doubt in my mind. What did he want? Why was he so interested in me? The rumors grew more venomous. They were no longer just whispers. They were stories, embellished and twisted with each telling. Some said he was a charlatan, a man who used charms to lure young women. Others said he was running from the law in a distant city. The community, which had once offered my mother silent pity, now offered her suspicious glances. They saw her daughter talking to this strange man, and they judged her. They judged her for not protecting me, for not keeping a tighter rein on me. The whispers became a chorus of condemnation. My mother heard the rumors. Of course she heard them. I saw the worry etch deeper lines onto her face. She tried to warn me away from him. "He is a stranger, Aduni," she would say, her voice strained. "You know nothing about him." But her warnings were vague. She never gave me a real reason to fear him, only the echoes of the community's gossip. My bond with Mr. Tay felt real and kind. The community's judgment felt cruel and unfair. I found myself caught between my mother's silent fear and the gentle friendship of a man who felt more like family than a stranger. Despite the warnings, my connection with Mr. Tay deepened. Our meetings became our secret. We would talk away from the prying eyes of the market by the quiet stream that ran behind the town. It was there that he taught me how to skip stones across the water, a simple joy I had never known. He listened as I spoke of the emptiness in my life, the father-shaped hole that no amount of my mother's love could fill. I confessed my resentment, my confusion, and my longing for answers I knew I would never receive. He never judged me, he just listened. He shared parts of his own story, small pieces that felt like precious gifts. He spoke of a great mistake he made many years ago, a mistake born of pride and foolishness. He said it cost him everything he held dear. He spoke of running away, of trying to build a new life on a foundation of lies. The regret in his voice was a heavy, tangible thing. "Sometimes, Tay," he told me, his eyes looking far away, the silence is louder than any argument. "The things we do not say are the things that haunt us the most." His words resonated with the silence that had defined my own home for so long. One afternoon, he gave me a small, carved bird. It was a starling, its wings outstretched as if in mid-flight. "For Mai," he said softly, using the Yoruba word for star. My breath caught in my throat. It was a ghost on my tongue, a name I had not heard since I was a small child. "What did you call me?" I asked, my heart pounding. He looked flustered, confused. I am sorry," he stammered. "It is just an old word. It means star. You shine brightly like a star." He tried to laugh it off, but the slip was too profound. The name echoed in my mind for days. My star. It was the name my father, Adekunle, had called me. How could this stranger know it? I tried to ask my mother about it, but the moment I mentioned Mr. Tay, a wall went up. Her face hardened, and she changed the subject. The community continued to whisper, their warnings growing more urgent, but I was no longer listening to them. I was listening to the echo of a forgotten name, a name that tied this kind stranger to the deepest parts of my past in a way I could not yet comprehend. The annual New Yam Festival was the heart of our community's calendar. It was a time of celebration, of dancing, of masks, and of honoring tradition. The entire town gathered in the central square, dressed in their finest clothes. The air was thick with the smell of roasted yam and the sound of drums. My mother and I had a stall selling our best attire cloths. She seemed more relaxed than usual, caught up in the festive spirit. For a brief moment, the shadows that haunted our lives seemed to recede. It felt like a day for new beginnings. I saw Mr. Tay near the edge of the square. He was watching the Agungan dancers, their masked forms swirling in a riot of color and raffia. He caught my eye and gave a small, sad smile. He looked out of place, a solitary figure amidst the joyous crowd. I felt a pull to go to him, to share the moment with my friend, but my mother's hand on my arm held me back. Her grip was tight, her knuckles white. "Stay here, Aduni," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the man across the square. There was something more than just worry in her gaze now. There was fear. The climax of the festival was the unmasking of the chief Egungun. It was a moment of great ceremony. As the drummers reached a frenzy, the lead dancer slowly lifted his heavy, ornate mask. But as he did, a commotion erupted from the side of the square. A woman, a distant cousin of my mother's who had just arrived from a faraway city, was pointing. She was pointing directly at Mr. Tay. Her voice, shrill with shock and disbelief, cut through the noise of the drums. "Adekunle!" she screamed. "Adekunle! Is that you?" The name hung in the air. Time seemed to stop. The drumming faltered. The crowd turned as one, their faces a mixture of confusion and curiosity. My mother froze, her hand dropping from my arm as if she had been burned. Her face was a mask of pure terror. Mr. Tay, the man I knew as Tay, did not move. He stood as if turned to stone, his face pale, his eyes wide with a despair so deep it seemed to swallow all the light from the festival. The secret he had carried for 15 years was no longer his to keep. It now belonged to the crowd. Adekunle. The name echoed through the stunned silence of the festival square. It was a name I knew only from whispers and forgotten memories. It was the name of the father who had vanished. My eyes darted from the pointing woman to my mother, whose face had crumbled, and then to the man I knew as Tay. He slowly turned to face us, and in that moment, the disguise of Tay fell away completely. I saw him. I truly saw him for the first time. I saw the ghost from my past standing before me in the flesh. This kind stranger, my friend, was my father. The community erupted. The shock quickly turned to anger and accusation. Voices rose from the crowd. "He is the one who ran away," someone shouted. "He abandoned Funky and his child," another cried. The whispers that had followed him for months now became a roar of judgment. The shame he had run from 15 years ago had found him in the most public way imaginable. He was surrounded, not by a joyous festival, but by a circle of pointing fingers and angry faces. He did not defend himself. He simply stood there, his shoulders slumped, accepting the verdict of the town. My mother let out a cry, a sound of such profound pain that it silenced the crowd for a heartbeat. She grabbed my hand and tried to pull me away, to shield me from the truth that was now exploding around us. But I could not move. My feet were rooted to the ground. My mind was reeling, trying to connect the pieces. The familiar voice, the sad eyes, the name, Irawo. It all made a terrible, heartbreaking sense. The friendship I had cherished was built on the greatest lie of all. The man who had listened to me talk about my absent father was my absent father. The town elders stepped forward, their faces grim. The celebration was over. The police were called. The accusations were no longer just about abandonment. Old rumors about his debts, about the people he had swindled before he disappeared, resurfaced with a vengeance. They led him away, a man stripped of his name, his dignity, and his secret. I watched him go, not as a stranger, not as a friend, but as the father who had returned only to be torn away again. The festival square, once a place of joy, had become the stage for the complete and utter shattering of my world. The days that followed were a blur of shame and sorrow. Our small house felt even smaller, suffocating under the weight of the community's judgment. The whispers were no longer behind our backs, they were spoken to our faces. My mother rarely left her room. The stone fortress she had built around herself had finally crumbled, leaving her exposed and fragile. For the first time, she spoke to me about him. She told me about the debts, the lies, and the shame that had driven him away. Her words were not angry, just filled with a deep, weary sadness. The police investigation revealed the truth of his past. He had owed money, a significant amount, to dangerous men. He ran not just from shame, but from fear. He had spent 15 years living under a false name, moving from city to city, always looking over his shoulder. He returned to Elisa, he told them, because he could no longer bear the loneliness. He wanted to see the daughter he had left behind, even if it was just from a distance. The man who had seemed like a villain was also a man broken by regret. He had paid his debts to the men he owed long ago, but he had not yet paid the debt to his family. He was released after several weeks. The old financial crimes were too long ago to prosecute. His only remaining sentence was the one to be delivered by his family. He came to our house one evening. He did not knock. He stood outside the door, his head bowed, waiting. It was I who opened it. My mother stood behind me, a silent, trembling pillar. We looked at him, this man who was both a stranger and the origin of our pain. There were no easy words. There was only a chasm of 15 silent years between us. Reconciliation was not a single moment of tearful embrace. It was a slow, painful process. It was him, sitting in our living room, finally telling the whole truth without excuses. It was my mother, listening, her tears falling for the years of struggle she had endured alone. It was me, asking the questions that had been buried in my heart since I was a child. Why did you leave? Did you ever think of us? Forgiveness was not easy. It was a choice we had to make every single day, to look at the broken pieces of our family and decide if we had the strength to start putting them back together. The healing of our family was a quiet affair conducted within the four walls of our home, away from the prying eyes of the community. Adekunle, my father, did not try to reclaim his old life. He understood that the man who left could never be the same man who returned. He started by making amends in small ways. He would repair the leaking roof. He would help my mother with the heavy dye pots. He did not ask for forgiveness with words, but with actions. He showed us day by day that he was here to stay. He was done with running. My mother, Funka, slowly began to let go of the bitterness that had been her shield for so long. She started to hum again while she worked, quiet tunes at first, then the old folk songs he remembered from their youth. One evening I saw them sitting together, not talking, but sharing the silence. It was no longer a heavy, oppressive silence. It was a comfortable quiet, one that spoke of shared history and the tentative beginnings of a shared future. They were not mending what was broken, but learning to build something new from the ruins. The most important lesson was for me. I learned that silence does not heal wounds, it only allows them to fester in the dark. The secrets my parents kept from the world and from each other were the true source of our family's destruction. My father's return, though chaotic and painful, forced the truth into the light, and it was only in the light that we could begin to heal. I vowed to myself that I would not repeat their mistakes. My life and the lives of my future children would be built on a foundation of honesty, not silence. Our family is not perfect. The scars of the past remain, but they are scars, not open wounds. My father is teaching me how to carve wood, his calloused hands guiding mine. My mother is teaching me new patterns for the Adir cloth. We are a family learning to be a family again. The cycle of pain, passed down through a generation of secrets, has been broken. We are proof that reconciliation is possible, that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a comforting lie. A new dawn has broken over our small house, and for the first time in a long time, it is filled with hope.